welcome everybody. We've got Annika's here. Oh, Betsy's here. Sorry, I'm Annika. Sometimes your names don't like correlate with your actual names. So looks like Shah is here. Oh, Sharo is here from Dallas. So we'll see how this goes today. This is something new I'm trying. Typically when I do a new release, I will do a blog post, but I thought that maybe we could try and incorporate more of an interactive kind of thing where I kind of show you some of the products and then we can put together some layouts using some of the products. And then I have a folder of some of the layouts that the team have done, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of run through those quickly and kind of give you some inspiration. So this is a session of inspiration using a bunch of the different art supplies that I've released over the last couple of weeks. So we have the ArtPlay palette Aubade, which is this one here. So of course that comes with papers, elements. I'm just going to run through. There's a lot of products to look at, but we may as well look at them. So this actually should not be in here. This is the 4 Artsy papers, and then we've got the 4 solid papers. And then the different elements, we've got a bunch of cool elements here. The ones that are in folders are the ones that are delivered in both PSD and PNG format. So regardless of whether you're working in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, then you can either use the Photoshop file, which is layered, or you can layer up these different elements to create those elements. And so the beauty of these particular files are that when you open this up, you can see that the drop shadow layer is on a separate layer. And this allows you to recolor that layer to best coordinate with your design. And you can also change the opacity of that layer depending on how dark or light your background paper is. So I'm gonna go ahead and just close that out. And so you can see that we have a bunch of different elements in here. And then of course we have the brush set, which is always a favorite of mine. This one comes with 2 different ABR files. So you have the option then to, if you're working in Photoshop Elements 15 or above, or in Photoshop CC, then you have access to brushes that are larger than 2500 pixels. So I always try to include a secondary brush set if the brushes are larger, as opposed so that you have them at maximum resolution. And then in the second folder we have the transfers and overlays. So there's always a variety of art strokes and splatters, paper texture overlays, and then there's some paint, some fun color and watercolor style transfers. So lots of fun stuff here to add to your layout designs. And then last week I released the Artsy Transfers. So these come in 3 different folders, and you can see that these differ from the PNG files in that they are delivered in multi-layer format. So that means you can essentially turn off the layers, you can rotate them, you can recolor them, you can reorganize them. So the Artsy Transfers are really cool. I personally like the transfers and overlays for kind of quick and easy layouts, because of course these are single layered. If I bring this in, they do differ slightly, by the way, the transfers and the overlays. So you can see this is just one single layer, whereas the Artsy Transfer has multiple different layers, so you can customize it a little bit more. So I personally like to use them both. Often when I'm using the Artsy Transfers, then I will use these layers individually to embellish my pages. So I might want to use this art stroke here independently from all of these other layers, for example. And then we have the Artsy Cards. They are really good. In fact, I've copied all of the JPEG files out here, but you get four 3x4 cards in 2 different orientations, 4 6x4 cards in 2 different orientations, and then you get 6x6 cards. So these are really fun for dragging and dropping. You can use them with the clipping mask function. You can frame them, all kinds of fun things. Welcome everybody if you're new into the session today. I'm just kind of peeking over it and looking at the chat box. So thanks for saying hello if you're here. I'm really happy to see you. So we're just kind of making our way through the products. We have the Artsy template. This is really fun because you can drag that PSD file into your workspace and you can simply manipulate these layers individually. So the idea is here you can create a fast and easy layout by adding your photos into the different photos. And then what I would do personally with this template is I would use the framed masks that perhaps come with these, go in there and maybe let's go get the third one, maybe bring this one in. So I'm just going to drag this. Actually, let's go with the fourth one. I think the fourth one will work better. So you can drag this in here. And then if you select the last layer of the Artistry before all of the frame layers begin, and then you go ahead and you select the photo blends layers that are in that number 4 mask of those framed masks, and then move them over, then this is going to sit quite perfectly into your design. So you can essentially go and select a photo. So I'm going to go to my photos and look for a fun photo that we can add. I just got back from Florida, if you didn't know. So I've got all of these really great images. Maybe just drag this one in and see how this one works. So I'm going to drag it directly onto my canvas and drag it over the top of the photo blends layer. So with that photo blends layer selected, by moving that photo into my layout, the photo is going to be deposited directly onto that layer, and then go to layer, create clipping mask. Oop, got the wrong layer selected. You want to make sure you have the photo layer selected because we are going to clip that photo directly to that mask. So you can see now that we have immediately blended a photo into that Artsy template. And then of course you can go and you can manipulate the other layers if you want to. So if I wanted to recolor any of these layers, like this one for example, I could select that layer and go to Edit, Fill, click on the color box, click on Color again to activate our color picker, click OK. And then with that Preserve Transparency box checked, click OK. Then I also have the option of changing the blending mode if I want to. So maybe change that to color burn. And if that color is slightly off, I can go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. That's Enhance, Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation in Photoshop Elements. And then I can change the hue and the saturation. I can even change how light or dark that is. So it gives us a really great way to perfect the coloring. And I love how there's kind of this sandy look to this mask. So it kind of, the texture in the mask really kind of accentuates my photo here. And then of course, so these are the framed masks. If I wanted to, I could have brought the frame in as well. So I could have brought the whole lot in. I've actually placed that behind the layer, which gives it sort of a blended effect, but you can move these up and down the layers panel. So I could have this in here if I wanted to, and go ahead and turn these frames off if I want, or I can have those on layer and I can group these together and I can turn this off. And then I also have options within this layer to customize. So I can decide whether I want to have this edge frame. I could recolor this edge frame if I wanted to by going to Edit, Fill, and then going ahead and select a color from my background by sampling it, and I can change that to sort of more of a blue if I wanted to. I can also change the opacity. I can change the blending mode if I want to. I can change the blending mode and adjust the opacity. So lots of fun ways that I can kind of manipulate that edge if I wanted to do that. I think I'm going to bring it back up there and go to linear burn. And then we also have a paper texture as well that's going to give a little bit of texture to the frame. So you can have this on, you can take this off, you can add that on without the texture. And then of course you can turn all those layers off and have sort of more of a ghost kind of look. You could even use just the frame. So if I went and duplicated that photo layer and dragged that up and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. Let's go ahead and turn this off. There we go. Then you can see we've got the frame over the actual mask and we lose the texture in the background. And then we can turn that off if we want to. We can turn the matte on in the background if I want to have that white background in there. So lots of fun different ways to use this. I'm going to turn that off and then turn this on. So you can use it like that as well if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and turn off all of the mask layers. And then of course you can, once you have the photo blended into the background, you can add your other images. Whoops, I got the wrong. Let's go ahead. And so if I wanted to add this one in, for example, I could select that frame mask layer. It's taking a little time to open. Let's go ahead and just resize this using our transform controls. And then go to Layer, Create Clipping Masks. So I can then fill these frames with our photos. And then probably with a template like this, I would replace this gray background layer by going to that ArtPlay palette that we just looked at and selecting one of these background papers. So maybe we'll go with this textured cream one. And I'm going to drag that directly into my canvas. And then it's just a matter, once we've got our photos in place, of adding in the journaling and perhaps adding a title. So instead of this title here, you do have the option to type in a title if you want to. So I could write The Beach and change the fonts accordingly. But you know that I always deliver some WordArt to go with this collection. So if we go back to our main kind of folder of DigitalART Supplies here, we've got this Aubade kind of word collection. So lots of different kind of, not necessarily beachy titles, but just titles that you could use for all sorts of themes. And I always try to think really carefully about the words and the titles that I include so that it's going to be a palette that, or a collection that you can kind of mix and match with the photos that you like to take a photo of. So any of the memories that you have, I like them to kind of coordinate. So this one kind of goes really well with my particular theme. It could have been though that I put in this early bird too. This early bird would be great for somebody who likes to get up early, maybe go out for a walk. This fisherman's one of them. So we could have added this up here as well if we wanted to, and had that instead. So that kind of gives you an idea of just how versatile these titles are. You can resize them, you can rotate them. If you watched my Create Custom Clusters session last week, I showed you how to create a sticker style effect and add various layer styles to these particular collections. And then of course you probably want to add some embellishments. And I have designed a number of embellishments that you can use with this collection. These happen to be shell ones, but you can see that they are much like the Artsy Transfers, only with these, we have the actual element in PSD format for my Photoshop and Elements users, like this one here. But then I also, again, include these layers separately so that you can kind of layer them up on top of one another if you're working in a different program. I don't do this with the Artsy Transfers because there are too many variances in terms of placement and the blending modes and the opacity that makes it too difficult for people outside of Photoshop to kind of reassemble those. I think that there's too many variables, but with the multimedia elements, it's much easier. So to embellish, this is a really easy way to embellish. I like to go to the top of my layers panel and then just select all of these layers. And then with the move tool selected and the auto select option unchecked, we can just drag that onto our canvas. And of course you then have the option of maybe moving some of these layers around. So maybe I want to move this photo glow around somewhere else. Maybe this one I want to change the color. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and change the color of that. Green is kind of nice. I like the green, so I'm going to stick with that. Again, if you're working in elements, that's going to be Enhance, Adjust, Color, Hue and Saturation. So somebody's having an issue with the video. I don't know what the issue is. If you can tell me what the issue might be, I can help you. I know in the past some people have had issues with the streaming, so it could be an internet connection thing. I'm not sure everybody else. We've got 38 people in here right now, so I'm only getting one person. The other thing you can do is maybe turn off your computer. You can restart your computer, exit, come back in. So just a few ideas for you if you're struggling with viewing the video at the moment. So back to our element here. We have this photo glow here, so I might want to move that around. You know, maybe I want to change the color of this button here. So I'm going to select that button layer and go back to my hue and saturation and maybe change the color of that to maybe more of a brown. I could increase the saturation to make it more yellow. Maybe I want it really bright and we'll go with a red to make it pop and stand out. And then of course, if you decide you don't want certain elements, you can turn off the visibility of those elements. So I've turned off that driftwood and I've turned off that splatter. And so you can build up your design like that. So that's one of the great things about the Artsy template. The other thing I like to use the Artsy template for is to actually use it as a starting point, or to, so kind of if I wanted to turn off these layers, for example, let's get rid of these frame layers and go ahead and go ahead and turn this off and just let's go ahead and turn off that for now. But one of the other things you could do too is that these transfers, like this transfer here, you could go back to a previous collection. So if I just kind of go back to the previous collection, which is Jubilate. So this was the collection that I released last month, and we go back into the Jubilate ArtPlay palette and select one of the Artsy Papers. We can drag it on top of our design and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then perhaps move this around, and you can see how you can kind of customize this template to get your own kind of fix or your own different approach to the layout design. So maybe not in this particular case, but if you wanted to kind of get more mileage out of these templates, it's a really great way to be able to do that. So now we've kind of got a different look. So just another way, because kind of think of these transfers as clipping masks and how you can customize them by using different digital art supplies. So that's the Artsy template. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize that for now, and let's go back and see what else we have in our Aubade collection. So we also, this is kind of the main collection. So we have the Multimedia Shells. There are 4 different flavors, and they all coordinate with the Artsy Papers. And then we also have the masks, which again, there are 4 of them, and these 2 coordinate with the Artsy Papers. And of course, they are also delivered in individual PNG format, because I think that they're fairly self-explanatory how you can kind of rebuild them. Artsy Transfers are a little bit more tricky. So we have those 2, and then we have the WordART, which we've already taken a look at. In the WordART, you can also kind of mix and match those WordArts. So I'll show you in the Freestyle Layout, how I like to take perhaps 2 or 3 components, different components of the WordArt, and kind of bring them together to create a cluster. And you get a feel of how I do that in the preview. So you can kind of group together one of these WordArt titles. You can add in a wood word with a drop shadow, and then maybe add in a word transfer in the back. You can also use this beaded threads that I include as well. So lots of flexibility. You can also recolor the titles quite easily as well, which is a fun way to embellish your pages. So with the ArtPlay palette and the WordART mix and the framed masks and the multimedia, that's 5, and the Artsy template, you get 5 products. And when you purchase the collection, you also get the special bonus that I started doing probably about 2 years now. It's coming up for 2 years. But in here, I give you a bunch of layout ideas. So these different layouts show you how you can put those supplies together. And there's always a bonus 5th Artsy paper, which I deleted from the original one. I usually have it in there. I like them all to coordinate and see them together so that they work kind of as a collection. And then there's usually some extra word art to add into the mix. And then in this case, I also added in this really fun frame, which we will look at later. So this is kind of cool because it's the same sort of scenario as the framed mask, but this one includes a fun little fish embellishment, and it includes 3 photos instead of 1. So let's go ahead and just build a layout using this bonus collection. So my favorite way to start with one of these, with any of my designs really, is to start with the Artsy paper, because when you drag this Artsy paper into your background, you can also go to File, Open, incidentally, and navigate to where you have your DigitalART Supplies saved. I personally like to just drag it in, but the Artsy paper is great because it's a pre-made foundation. I've already done the work for you, so all you have to do is add your photos, and you can do this by custom blending your photos into the backgrounds. And I have a bunch of blending tutorials at the store at AnnaAspinusDesigns.com. If you want to go real easy, then you're going to use these photo blends clipping masks that I create to coordinate with these collections, and some of them have frames, some of them don't. I like to mix it up so that I can kind of suit all preferences. So what I've done here is I've selected all of the layers in my layers panel by clicking on that first layer, holding down that shift button on my keyboard, and then clicking on that last layer. And then with that move tool selected, I am just going to drag this onto my canvas. And you can see that this mask and these frames have been designed perfectly to coordinate with this particular layout. So again, you have lots of options here. If I wanted to, I could turn off the element if I didn't want to have a fish, if I wanted this to be more of a non-beach or coastal theme, or I can switch it back on. Either way, it doesn't matter. I can remove the stitching if I want to. I can reposition the stitching and place it in different areas, so maybe have it there instead. And then you have the same flexibility with these frames, so you can turn off the mask layers if you want to by clicking on those layers so that you can see the layout through the center there. So for this layout, I actually created a layout, I think, for the newsletter. So if you're signed up for my newsletter, you can go to AnnaAspinusDesigns.com, and if you're not signed up, then go ahead and do that, because you get a nice big collection of free digital art and another bonus class. But what I did was I pulled in one of these beach photos. I'm going to try this one this time. It was a different one that I used last time. But with that Photo Blends mask layer selected, I'm going to drag this in so that it covers my entire layout design, and then go Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and you can see how that blends really quite nicely into that mix. And we have these frames that sort of give it extra visual interest. And again, if I wanted to have this in a different format, I can duplicate that layer by dragging it down to that new layer icon to create that duplicate copy of the photo, and then drag it up on top of that mask layer, and then go Layer, Create Clipping Mask. So this is going to give it a slightly different look. And again, drag that down to the new layer icon. If you're working in elements, that option is going to be at the top of the layers panel. Drag it to the top here and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then again, drag that up or down and then up to the top of that mask layer and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then if I wanted to, I could even turn this off in the background. So if I don't want to have that photo blends layer in the background, then I don't have to either. So lots of different options here. Again, you have the same option to turn off the texture of the frames if you wanted to as well. I personally like it without the frames. But you can turn off the edge layers if you want to. I kind of like the grungy effect. And then you can build a title. So if I go back to my bonus, we can use one of these. So exhale, inhale, and then maybe use this seize one. So I'm going to select those, and I'm holding down that Control or Command key on my keyboard and drag this into my workplace or into my workspace. And then I can add the title maybe over here, and then move this woodward layer up to the top here, drag that down, and then maybe add this kind of here. And then I like to add a little bit of dimension from my layers panel, and then from my layer styles. So I go to layer, layer style, and drop shadow, and that adds a really nice drop shadow to our layout, to our kind of layout here. And I could also move these across if I wanted to. You can play with the position of your title. You could have it separately up here. That's kind of fun to have a split title. You can have it, maybe I'll have it up to the top like this. So just kind of just moving the pieces around to find the best fit. So I quite like that. I like how the S aligns with that art stroke underneath. And the only way that you can really find a good fit for these elements is to really just move them around and see what you like best. So once we have that in the mix, then we can go ahead and embellish. So I've decided I'm not going to use the fish element. So this means we can now go back to our ArtPlay palette. And this time, instead of using those multimedia elements, I'm going to go and look at some of the elements that we have available to us in our elements folder. And so I kind of like this fish here. This is kind of fun. So I can bring this in. Now you don't want to drop these PSD files directly onto your canvas because what's going to happen is you're going to lose the ability to separate that drop shadow layer. You can see now it's kind of been merged into one layer. So you always want to drag this PSD file and drop it into the background. And then that way it's going to open up as a separate file. You can see the fish shadow and the ribbon. So selecting those two layers, I can now drag this onto my layout design. And this allows me then to be able to change the fill. So I can make that shadow much darker. I can make it much lighter. If you're using Photoshop elements, then you're just going to change the opacity. And there's a bunch of conversation going on in the background here. Thank you for those of you that are helping those who are struggling with the video to download the app. So I appreciate that. It's really hard to kind of do the tech support when I'm trying to demonstrate as well. So thanks, Liz, for kind of stepping in and helping out there. And then we're going to go back and maybe open up this driftwood. So this is another driftwood file that I thought was kind of fun. I'm going to drag this in and maybe add this behind. So we can build our own custom cluster if you want to. And I have a whole series of classes that are just completed on doing just that. So if you're interested in learning how to build your own clusters, then go ahead and go to the store at Anna Aspinus Designs and look for the folder that says Create Custom Clusters. It's going to provide lots of information and direction about how to do that. And then we go and take a look and see what else we've got here. We've got this fun little crab charm. So I'm going to drag that into my workspace, drag it into the background. And then those layers are all selected. So I just need to drag them into the top here. Maybe add this up the top. And this one I need to move to the top so that it's above that frame layer. And you just kind of keep going and just adding more and more elements until you're done. We've got a really fun starfish here. I love this starfish. Maybe drag this one into the mix. add him over the top. And once you get to the point where it starts to look a little bit busy and your attention starts to move away from the photo to the elements, then that's probably a good time to stop. And so notice I've built a really nice visual triangle here, which draws the eye and frames our image. If I want to kind of boost up that image, I can select the photo layer and go to Image Adjustment Levels. In Photoshop Elements, that's Enhance, Adjust Lighting Levels, and I can increase. I have got the wrong layer selected, so I want to select the layer, the photo layer that's attached to the photo blends layer, and go to Image Adjustments, Image Adjustments Levels. So that's Enhance, Adjust Lighting Levels in Photoshop Elements. And I can move this white lever to the left, and that's going to increase those highlights. And I can move this shadows lever to the right, and that's going to increase the shadows. And then we have these mid-tones, and so that's also a fun lever to play with, just to kind of make that photo pop a little bit more. So this is how I have been able to create this layout. It's a Artsy paper background with the frame, the framed mask, with the ability to either use the frames or not use the frames. And then we've used the title work from the bonus. I could have also gone into my WordArt if I wanted to. Let's go to the WordArt if I can find it. So here we have the WordArt, and I could have also brought in maybe this one of these word transfers or this beaded threads, and I can drag that onto my layout design. And I can move this around, so I can add this into the mix if I want to, and then maybe drag this up to the top and have this down the bottom. So we can add that into the mix as well. So you can go in and you can mix and match these different pieces of words. And then, so that's kind of creating a layout using the bonus. And then this past week, I also introduced another collection. So I've never done this before, but it's kind of an add-on collection. I called it what did I call it? I can't find it now. I actually called it the Summer Asset Bundle, but it really is sort of designed to go with the Aubade collection. You could also combine this with any of the other ArtPlay palettes, because of course these are all black and white, so they can all be recolored. And then you also have the SkyTransfers, which really work well with any of your outdoor layouts. So if I wanted to add in some additional artwork, then I could use these brushes. So we have 3 sets of brushes actually. We have actually 4 sets of brushes. I call this Artsy Paint Tools, but we've got 4 brush sets, and then we've got these transfers. And you can use these brushes quite simply by just dragging the images into your workspace if you want to. So let's go ahead and just see what my layout looks like. So where I could add a sun into the mix. So maybe add a sun into this horizon here. So I'm looking for an option there. So maybe something like this. We could try and bring this in. I'm going to drag it directly onto my canvas, and we can have that in the background. So we could add that into the mix if we wanted to. Maybe drag this down and place it below the frame layers. And if I want it to stand out a little bit more, I can maybe go to Edit, Fill. With the Preserve Transparency box checked, I'm going to select white, and that's going to make that a different color. Maybe you just flip this. I can also go to Edit, Transform, and flip it on a horizontal axis so that it fits just a little bit better with my design. So add that there like that. And you might also want to try a different option. And if you want to add these brushes to your panel, like I have some of them loaded in here, I'm just go ahead and delete that one. You can see I've already added these ones in at the top here. So I have these other ones. So I can select any of these brushes if I want to. And then with the paintbrush tool selected and I'm gonna, with the foreground, if I click on this foreground thumbnail in the tools panel, I can again access that color picker, and I can either sample a color from my layout design, or I can intentionally choose a color. And then this allows me to be able to stamp this image directly onto my layout design. Now you always want to create a new layer when you're adding in any brushwork, because this means that when you stamp that on there, then you have the ability to be able to rotate this. I can resize it, I can move it around. So if I want it to go kind of behind the crab here, I could do that, have it like that. And then if I had done, for example, if I had decided to just kind of stamp this directly on the photo, then I wouldn't have the ability to make those different changes. So two different ways to use the brushes. And then I think I'm going to add in maybe some shells in this white space here. So I'm going to select that background layer and then add a new layer. And then I'm going to show you how to, so in order to actually add these brushes to your panel, you can just go and select the brushes that you want to add. So for this one, for example, let's take a look. Which one do I want to add? Maybe this one. So I can drag this into my workspace and drag it directly onto my layout design. And this is what why I like to include the PNG files. It's so that you can see close up what you want to add to your design. It's also really helpful too if you're using a different version of Photoshop. In fact, I just had an email the other day about somebody having a hard time loading these into their brushes in PaintShop Pro. And so I sent them a link on how they could define their own brushes using these images. So, and it works the same way in Adobe Photoshop. And I do actually have a free class at Anna Aspinus Designs Basic Brushes class, which shows you how to kind of load brushes and add and create brushes and all of those sorts of things. So in order to add an ABR file to your panel, you're just going to drag that ABR file to the panel, and then you can see that that folder now is deposited at the bottom of that collection. And then this allows us to select the paintbrush tool. Let's go ahead. So with this paintbrush tool selected, you're going to click on the foreground layer, and I think I want to go with like a brown color. So I'm going to select that brown, click OK. We already created our new layer above our paper layer, and I want to add the brush here. So now I'm going to select this brush and then stamp it onto our layout design. Now you can see that doesn't fit so well. One of the ways I like to do this is I stamp it onto my layout design, and you can't see it because it's hidden behind the photo, but this allows me to have the full image of the brush, and then I can kind of resize it, I can move it around, I can rotate it to find the best fit for my image. So I don't know if I really kind of like that. I like how this aligns up in there, so maybe keep that there and duplicate this layer, and I'm just unchecking that auto select box so I don't sort of lose any of the details, but I can maybe add this up here like this, or maybe add it down to the bottom. So I've kind of used that same brush twice in order to add visual interest to my design. I can also go and change the blending mode. So if I want to add, color burn is always a good one, and overlay can be quite nice as well. But color burn has this really kind of punchy kind of jewel tone. And then if you don't like the color, you can go back to hue and saturation, and you can kind of adjust and play and tweak that color so that it best supports your layout design. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I've been showing so far? This gives me a chance to have a quick sip of my water, and then we can kind of move on to a third layout design. Okay, no questions. Well, in that case then, I'm going to minimize this, close out these elements, and I thought it might be fun to show you how we can use some of these designs here. So these are sort of coastal pictorial designs, and they can be used to accentuate your photo. So let's go ahead and build a foundation. This time I am going to go back to my ArtPlay palette, and instead of using a Artsy paper, I'm going to build my own paper. And let's go ahead and select, select this paper 4. Oh, we've done one with that one. So maybe we'll use this blue paper. So we can add this into the mix. And then if we want to, we have the option to be able to use the Artsy Transfers. So I actually have moved all of the images out here so I can see what these look like. So I'm thinking maybe we'll add in this one here. So I have not kind of organized or designed any of these layouts. I'm literally just kind of dragging the images into my page and just kind of putting them together on the fly. So we can go, let's say no, and then maybe I'm going to open up another one of these designs. Which one do I want? So maybe I'll bring this one in, which is number 3, which will be in here. So I'm just going to bring this one in here. So you can add the whole transfer into the mix, or you can bring in just parts of a design. So maybe we want to bring just this portion of the design into the mix, and then maybe add this down the bottom. So the great thing about using these transfers, of course, is that you have the flexibility to be able to change the layers and turn off the layers. So if I decided that I don't want to use this layer, then I just turn off the visibility. And you can also change the layers independently from one another. I'm trying to find how this is going to fit the best. You can also delete parts of the layers. So say I like how that looks, but I don't like this piece here. I can select that paper layer, and then with the eraser tool just go in and just sort of clean that up a little bit. So I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to look at my brushes. So let's go ahead and see what we have in the way of brushes that we want to use. So I'm going back to that summer asset bundle and go back to our seascapes, and I'm going to go through and look at some of these and see which one I maybe want to add. And it's kind of impossible to tell how these are going to work until you kind of add them into your page. So what I like to do is kind of just pick maybe 3 like this. Not that one. I think I want to use this one. That one's a fun one. So I've picked out 3, and I'm just going to drag them directly onto my layout design and just hit that like that. So I've got 3 of those layers. The idea is not to use all of them. The idea is to see which one works best for my design. So I'm going to now start sort of moving these around and seeing how they might fit. So this one's probably not a great fit here. Let's go ahead and turn that one off. Try this one. I like this one. This one works much better. So we could add that one into the mix, or this one, which also works. So we've got 2 kind of possibles here. I like both of them. Maybe need to. So can you see here, I don't want to rotate it because I don't want to change the horizon. It works really well, except for I would really like this art stroke here to be able to align with the paperwork here. So this is, again, the beauty of using the Artsy Transfer. I can now go and select that art stroke layer, and I can now move that independently and change its location. So maybe add that like that. I could even remove it if I wanted to. I actually don't really think I want to have that on there. Yeah, add it like that. And the way I tell if I want to have it or not is to turn it off and see if I miss it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off that layer. And then I want to build up the sky. So in order to build up the sky, I'm going to go and take a look at those Artsy Transfers. So these, sorry, not Artsy Transfers, SkyTransfers. These are exactly like the Artsy Transfers, except for they are kind of skyscapes that you can just drag and drop to add visual interest to any photo that has sky in it. So I'm going to drag this into my workspace. In this case, because we're not using a photo, then this is going to just build up this artistry in the background here. But it's also really great if we go back to that layout that I was working on here. Let's go ahead and add this one in here. So close a few of these out, I think. So if I wanted to try this, I could go and add this into our layout design, and I've added it behind. So you can see how that kind of builds out in the background there. But I can also bring it on top as well and sort of play around with the idea of having some of those layers there. Now, some of these layers are kind of covering my subject, but that's easy. I can go ahead and just turn that off like that. And if I wanted to erase an area, let's see what else we've got. I think there's a white, you kind of have to turn the layers on and off. So you can see there's a white stain layer here. So it might be tempting here. You can use the eraser tool. I tend to use the eraser tool a lot because I find it much faster and more intuitive than the layer mask and brushes. But if you wanted to add a layer mask and use brushes in order to be able to non-destructively edit any of these layers, you can do that too. But you can see I'm just using the eraser tool with a soft round brush just to delete that portion of the paint so that my subject isn't sort of obscured. And then I can go in and add in those other layers. This layer, if I wanted to, I kind of like this layer, but obviously not in its current location. So maybe I'll bring this down and add this into the mix somewhere else. So that kind of works quite well there. And again, I can take that brush and just kind of erase parts of it. And then this is kind of looking a little funny here too. So I can maybe move this over here or maybe add it over here, just so that it's not impinging on our layout design. This is kind of fun. So I can move this out the way if I wanted to. I can have it there. I can rotate it if I wanted to and have it kind of sticking out the back here. So you can customize these different SkyTransfers to essentially just support your layout design and photos. So I'm going to leave that like that. So you can see how I've added in the sky to be able to kind of just accentuate and kind of extend the sky beyond what's available in our blended photo. Okay. In this case, I'm going to drag this same transfer and drag it onto the background here, and you can see how it works with this design. So this adds a really nice splash of color. It adds in some visual interest, and it also supports our layout design. So I'm just going to move this over, maybe over to the side here, so it's not impinging on our layout design. And then maybe that navy stain too, we may want to have to move that somewhere. And so notice I'm just moving these pieces around and rotating them just to find the best fit for our image. So I kind of found that worked quite well in the previous one, so I was going to try it again. Don't like it so much in this particular layout design, so I'm going to play with that. So I kind of like that look there. And again, you can change the colors of any of these layers. You can change the opacity or the fill of any of these layers if you want to make them less prominent. You can turn off completely the visibility of these layers. Not this one. What happened to my stain layer? So I'm selecting the auto select option so I can click on this layer so that it acts, so I can find it. There we go. Now I found it. So maybe add this in. So I kind of like, that's kind of cool too. It's sometimes, this is fun. Let's leave this down here. So I like it down there. And if I wanted to change that from blue to brown, I can either go to my hue and saturation and change the color of that. I can also change the saturation. If I want to make it more gray, I can make it lighter by increasing this lightness slider. And then I can also go to edit fill, and then with that color box selection, I can also sample a color from my layout design, any of the colors. With the preserve transparency box checked, I can change it that way. I can also add a blending mode if I choose to do so. So I'm going to go with color burn, for example. So that's a really great way. So we're building up kind of a really nice design here. Now I'm thinking I want to add in a title. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there's a nice little space here that I can add my title into the mix. So I'm going to go back now to my DigitalART Supplies. Let's go back here and go into my Aubade word mix, and let's go with ocean blue this time. So I'm going to do ocean blue, and I'm going to add wild, and then we'll add in this wave word art. So I've got 3 different options here. I'm going to drag them in and drag them directly onto my canvas. And I'm clicking the check mark. In Photoshop Elements, that will be on the bounding box. In Photoshop, it's up at the top of your screen here. And I want to check that to place each of those images. And then carefully just sort of reposition them. Now they're kind of hidden in amongst my layers right now because I didn't kind of move my cursor to the top of my layers panel. So I'm going to have to be careful about moving these over. And sometimes it gives you kind of a nice look when you do that. If I add this layer style, drop shadow layer style, you can see how by intermixing the artistry and having the layers all sort of intermingled with one another, you can create some really great effects. You can also just bring the word art to the top of the layers panel by selecting those layers and having them like this. So I'm just sort of playing around and trying to get these layers to fit nicely together. So maybe like that. And if you don't like how the words are fitting, so you can also change them. So in order to separate these 2 words, you're going to select one of these lasso tools. I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool. And then carefully, you're just going to sort of make a selection around one of the words. Make sure you have the word art layer selected in the layers panel, and then you're going to go to edit cut, edit paste, and then now you can see you can move these words independently from one another. So I can place it here. I could do blue wild ocean if I wanted to and have this down here. So that looks like a good option. And then once I have my title in place, then I can start thinking about maybe adding in some embellishment. So I'm going to close that transfer down, and then I'm going to head over to let's go back to our Multimedia Shells, and let's take a look which ones. I actually like to use the preview to see which ones might work quite well. I quite like this one, but we've already used this one. So I'm going to go with this one. And I think that one is the first one. So this one here. So I'm going to drag this into my layer. Remember, you don't want to add a PSD file directly onto your canvas. You want to open it into your Photoshop or Photoshop Elements workspace, select all of the layers, and then move those layers onto your layout design. So maybe add this down here. And I'm not really loving the pink, so I'm going to select that pink layer and see what other colors that we can maybe introduce. So maybe that is a better option, or the yellow. Kind of like the yellow. And then we can also, there's another yellow down here. I'm going to turn off that layer. And then we can even move some of these around too. So if I wanted to move this over here, or up behind the words, I could do that. And then as you start sort of moving these layers around, then you might want to reposition some of the other layers. So maybe bring this over here. Manage to grab that word art, so let's bring that back over here. And I like the white paint stroke here where it is. I think that that's quite good. So notice now how I am modifying this element to coordinate, to best coordinate with my design. And then if I want to add in more elements, I can open up maybe one of these other multimedia elements. So let's go with this one here. I drag that one into our workspace. And then maybe I just want to add a single element in here. So in this case, I've got 3 different shell elements here. I don't want to add this orange one because it's the same color as this orange one here, but maybe the sand dollar would work. So I'm going to isolate the selection of that sand dollar by just selecting that element layer, holding down the shift button or the control button on my keyboard. So I'm just selecting those 2 layers and then dragging that into my design. And then with those transform controls, I can rotate it, I can resize it, and then I can also reposition it by moving that down the layers panel. So that kind of fits quite well there. I'd like it to fit like that, and then maybe we'll move this stitching out just a little bit. So I'm just kind of manipulating it. There's another shell element here that's kind of fun, so I'm going to grab that one and maybe add this one up here. So you can see how I've built kind of a layout by adding that into the mix. If I wanted to use those Artsy paintbrushes that come in with it, I can do that too. So if I go ahead and navigate down to the bottom of my layers panel, create a new layer, and then maybe experiment with adding in some of this paint. Now these are really nice big paintbrushes, so I can play around with adding in just random paint effects in the background there. So that's kind of fun, but I can't really see it very well. So this time I'm going to select a blue and maybe add that into the mix. So I really like how that looks at the bottom here, but I can see sort of a harsh line here. So this is where I'm going to use that mask with brushes or use my eraser tool and just rid myself of that area that's coming down the bottom here. Select a new layer, and then maybe we can add in something at the top here. So maybe add this brush. I'm going to try the white again, see if we can get it to, well, I had the eraser tool selected that time. So with the paintbrush tool and the paintbrush, add that into the mix. So I kind of like how this is coming out the top here, but of course we've sort of got too much white in the center. So this is where I can reselect that eraser tool and kind of go in and just remove those areas. So you can use the paintbrushes for that. You can add that into the mix. They also work really well for, let's go ahead and just add in create another layout real fast. I'm on a roll today. Going back to the Aubade ArtPlay palette, and this time I'm going to bring in this solid paper. I think we haven't used this yet. But it can also be a great way to start a layout design. You know, when you look at a blank canvas, you go, gosh, where am I going to start? Well, it can be a great way to just select one of these brushes here. Go ahead and select this one and maybe select a blue. So add in a blue and then add this in the top. And I've got that eraser tool selected, so I need to reselect that paintbrush tool. And I have, there we go. Paintbrush tool, and then now reselect that brush and add that into the mix. So just by adding a paint stroke onto your layout design, it gives you a way to basically create a focal point on which you can start adding other elements. So now I have a choice. I can go back to my transfers and overlays if I want to. So if I go back into part B, this is where all of our transfers and overlays are. And so maybe I'll bring this in. See if we make this work. So maybe add that in there. So I kind of like this here, but it doesn't really kind of work with the edge on this transfer. So if I lay that transfer on the side there and then just move this over, this is the beauty of having everything on separate layers. And then maybe I want to use that eraser tool again. Go in and just kind of remove some of that in the center. We've got some white space here. So I can maybe go back over here. Add in a transfer on this side. Maybe rotate it for a bit of fun. Maybe bring in some art strokes. These are my favorite, the art strokes. I always think that they're a lot of fun. So we can add these in. And this guy is kind of out there. So we're sort of building up our layout design here. So you can see this is sort of just, that was our anchor, and I started building everything on top of that. Maybe bring this in. Adding these, because these are PNG files, I can add them directly to my canvas. So I can add this on this side if I wanted to, or I can go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal, and add it on this side. So maybe add that in like that. I'm thinking now I want to, can add in this paper texture. Let's add this in, see what this looks like. So I'm kind of moving it down, trying to find the best fit. Maybe add that in like that. And I always like to add a linear burn blending mode to this, and then go in and just kind of remove the pieces that I don't want. So that adds some nice texture into the mix. Let's go and take a look what we have in the way of frames. So if we go back to our frames, kind of want a frame. So I need one of the portrait style ones unless I rotate it. So this is a landscape. This is also a landscape. Let's go back to the second one. So here's a portrait one. I don't remember if I used this one last time, or I think it was the fourth one. So let's go ahead and bring this guy in. Again, I'm moving it into my background because I don't want all of these layers to merge into a single layer. And I can add this here like this. And I can adjust the layers here too. So we have it's a paper texture here. I'm trying to figure out, there we go. So I'm using my auto select option with the move tool selected to locate these layers, but I can play around and change the location of some of these layers by sort of just dragging them out. So I want to see them a little bit more maybe. There's a stain layer at the top here. Drag this up and maybe out to the side, or maybe this side. Kind of like that, like that. And then you can go ahead and again make the decision whether you're going to use that frame or not, or if you're just going to blend the image. In this case, I think we will use the frame. So I'm going to select that mask layer, go back to my images. Let's see what we've got this time. So my feet in the salt water, so good. So I'm going to drag this over onto my layout design. You can see that the photo gets deposited directly above the mask layer, and then I'm going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then I can change the levels, make the whites whiter, make the darks darker, make that pop a little bit more. And then embellishment. So let's go back and see what we have. I like the multimedia elements because they're super fast and simple. So I think I already have this one open, but we'll just open it again just in case it'll pop up if I already have it open like that. And I can add this into the mix like this if I want to. Can add that over the top. So I kind of feel like I need something on this side though. So we can start playing around and seeing if we can make this go the other way. So with this twig layer selected, I've selected both the twig and the shadow layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal. And that's going to make our design work in a different way, give it a different orientation to support our photo, and then just sort of reorganize the shells that are in there just to kind of make them fit a little bit better. So maybe bring that up here like that. And then I've got a really great space here to put in our title. So I'm going to go and look at our titles again. See what we've got here. Soothe the Soul. That's perfect. So I'm going to drag that guy into our mix here, place it in the background. I want to add another sort of transfer in there. I could go and add in one of these word transfers if I wanted to. I can add that into the background. I can also go back to my transfers and overlays, if I wanted to. See if there's something there that I can bring into the mix. So maybe this would work. Let's drag this in and see how that adds. So I could add that in there. Maybe want to kind of reorganize the layers because I have it on top of the frame layer. So I'm just sort of building up the layers here. Another option would be to maybe go back to our Artsy paint layers and see if there's an Artsy paint layer that we can add into the mix here. Just sort of, I'm hovering these over to see if there's a good fit potentially. So maybe that would work quite nicely. Incidentally, if you want to see the outline of your brush, then you just hit the caps lock key. So when I hit the caps lock key, that outline disappears. When I hit it again, it reappears. So I'm gonna just create a layer above that background layer, and then maybe we'll do this kind of a sandy blue. I know we tried white already and we couldn't really see it very well, so I can add that into the mix. And I kind of like this little piece that comes down the bottom here, so I'm gonna keep that. I don't like this here though, so I'm just gonna kind of get rid of that. So we're just sort of building up the artistry. A couple of weeks ago, I had some Artsy stains. I don't know if I still have them in my panel, but they would have been kind of good to maybe add at the top here. I'm gonna add this sunshine into the mix though. I'm gonna create a new layer and maybe add this over here, but I need to select my paintbrush tool, and that is not the right color. So I'm thinking I want to try a blue. I know suns aren't blue, but instead of going with black, I want to add in the sun. Add it like that. I don't like that either. Let's go see what else they have down the bottom here. So there's that. I kind of like that. Let's do it with black though. Yeah, that looks good. Kind of makes this look like a sun. And in fact, this brush here coordinates with this one. So if I wanted to add the center of the sun in, I could add that in, but that looks a little much to me. I've actually seen some of my team too adding a stroke to these files. So you can go to layer, layer style, and stroke. And then you want to have it on the outside and then maybe increase. So if you wanted to make those lines a little bit more strong, then you can do that if you wanted to. I'm wondering if we could also do it with the layer style, and then let's go with a drop shadow, and then you can maybe increase the distance. That's going to add all the spread and the size. Just sort of playing around. That kind of gives a little bit of a softer look. So if you increase the size like that. So just a couple of other ways that you can maybe thicken those lines if you want to. I personally like it kind of more of a thin approach, but that kind of, let's go ahead and add a bit more word art into this mix. I kind of feel like we could add in a woodward down here. I always try and kind of add as much as I can without kind of overwhelming the overall design. And then, so vibes, let's add in vibes, that works. You notice I don't take too long to kind of pick a title. I just pick one that I think is gonna work with what I wanna say. And then I just add a drop shadow layer style like that. So yeah, so that is a third quick and easy design showing you how to use the Artsy paintbrushes. If you want to use these Artsy paintbrushes also with the photo inspired projects, then go ahead and check out some of the videos that are posted below, and you'll be able to use those in that way. Okay, so that's kind of the collection and how it all kind of works together. Of course, you can mix and match. I am going to, are there any questions about that before I move on and show you some of the layouts that the team have made? No questions? Okay. I am going to then move on to looking at some of the layouts. So my team have been busy this weekend creating lots of pages, and I thought it would be fun to kind of take a look at these. So this is one by Adrienne. Of course, she does a lot of heritage work, and I'm going to be actually doing a deconstruct of this page on Friday. So I have confirmed with Adrienne and I've got the file. So we're going to be looking at this really fancy cluster and her blending and of course her light. So I'm excited to share that with you. This one has kind of snuck in here. This is not the Aubade collection, so I'm going to kind of just sneak on to the next one. This one is from Anne Levin, I think. Levin. I always want to, some of these names are a little hard, but it's Anne Levin. And I'm going to say it's French. It's Levin. So anyway, I really like how she's repeated the use of this element here that is part of the ArtPlay palette, and she's kind of made it more prominent in the front by adding a drop shadow layer style and making it of greater contrast, but it gives you that depth perception and sandwiching her subject in the center. So I thought that was kind of a really fun technique. She's used the various elements to support. This looks like one of the transfers or the Artsy Transfers. So various layers from the Artsy Transfers, and then she's used the elements to embellish. So she's kind of got this little bow tie look, and then she's got this paper string that's coming through the hair. This is part of the ArtPlay palette. That fun little starfish we have in her hand, so she's cleverly placed that in her hand, and then she used the fishing net to embellish the woman's really dark jacket here. That's helped tone down the color and it's adds some visual interest. And then Diane has used the collection with some completely different colored images, which kind of shows you how versatile it is. Because of the neutral tones, then you can combine this collection with these more brightly colored images. So we've got some flower images, really, a big sunflower image, and then these images here. And then she has just recently become a grandma, so she has included that photo of her grandson into the mix too. This is also another one that I'm hoping to share with you on Friday in the AA Connect session. Just waiting to hear back from Anne. She's in Australia, I believe she's in Australia. She may not be, so I apologize if I've messed that up. I think she's in Australia, which means that she won't be getting back to me until a different time. But I really like the softness of this. I really like the different tones, how she has adjusted the colors of the palette. So I'm hoping to be able to take a peek at her PSD file and share that information with you. I thought this was a really neat page. This uses the stitched template album with kind of a photo inspired look. I like how she has added in the paper texture behind the image here, and then she's taken a collection of different elements from lots of different ArtPlay palettes and she's added them into the mix here. So lots of kind of blending. I kind of like how the traditional digital scrapbooking meets kind of photo artistry look here, and she's got very traditional on this side and then very artistry kind of style on the other side too. This one is a fun one as well. Again, I like how she's blended the image and she's been able to sandwich her subjects between these two element clusters. So lots of, like I said, go back to your create element cluster classes to learn how these are put together. This one Mikey has sent me. I'll be demonstrating this one on Friday, so we'll be doing a deconstruct of this one so you can see how this was put together, but it's a very clever page. I love how she's used that frame that you get as part of the bonus in the background here with an extraction. This one is super cute. So Michelle has one of her family members in hospital right now, so she made this cute collage to cheer up this person in hospital, which I thought was a lovely idea. This one is from Megan. So Megan is new to our team. She comes from more of a photo artistry background, but I love how she has used the sun in the background here. She added a photo glow to that behind it. So there's another great way to use that, and she's added in her focal point. This looks like a massive wave. So instead of using the SkyTransfer as a sky, she's used it as part of the ocean. And then she has added in her elements just to add some dimensions. So this is this surfer woman and the way that she's kind of created this sea using the paper textures and using this SkyTransfer. I thought that was really neat. And then this is a page by Diane. I don't know if she's used the Aubade collection here. It looks like she's used the Artsy paint brushes though. So this kind of gives you an idea how you can use the photo inspired pages and paint those or stamp those paintbrushes behind your photos to add a artsy kind of matte to your photo layers. So I like that one too. This is using the template, another kind of take. You can see how Michelle has switched up those transfer layers in the background to best support her images. And her title is really cool. I love how she has used a string. So instead of having the string go horizontal, it goes vertical. So she's rotated it 90 degrees. And then she's also added some fun beads to that particular string too, which is kind of a neat effect as well. Simple one from Heather here. I love how she's taken components from a previous ArtPlay palette. So she's taken the sand transfer from an older ArtPlay palette and she has added this into the mix along with some of the labeled words. It looks like that she has also used perhaps one of the SkyTransfers as a clipping mask. So you could introduce the photo and clip the photo to parts of the clipping mask. So this paint layer here, you could clip part of an image to. I think that, and then again, she has rotated this multimedia element as well to kind of create a foundation for this grass that's coming out the bottom here. And we looked at this one, and this one is this one demonstrates that sticker style technique that I demonstrated in the last Create Custom Clusters class, which is available from the store at Anna Aspinall's Designs. I love how she's also kind of played around with some different techniques and added them to other elements as well. This one's kind of fun. I keep yawning, I'm sorry, I'm not tired, but for some reason I am definitely wanting to yawn. So I maybe need to drink some more water. It's really hot here in Colorado today. So what I like about this is how she has used the paint in the background and she's used the SkyTransfers to create that sky. But I love the contrast between lots of imagery. So she has her tree coming up in the background and partial image down the bottom here. She has used the tape texture to align, and then she's built up this really great kind of focal point of or embellishment cluster over the top of her image. And I love the white space here. I think it's a really great contrast to have that white space with so much activity happening on the side here. And then this one is from Linda. She has combined this collection with a previous collection. I think this must be the one prior to Jubilate, so maybe Patience, or even actually Romance. I think it's probably Romance, but she's taken elements from this current collection and she's combined them with previous collections. So Linda has not been feeling well this last couple of months, so she is slowly making a comeback to the team, and so I'm excited to share more artistry with her. So she's just kind of getting back to it. This one's from Nancy. I love how she has two images and she's used blending modes and the art strokes to sort of delineate and separate her two blended images. A wonderful way to customize the multimedia embellishments and to create her own custom element cluster here. And you can see how she's added in her word art that's right next to the word cluster. Another one from Mikey. She's done the recoloring of the title to coordinate with her layout design, and she's created her own custom cluster, used blending modes and her photo with the masks to blend her image into her layout design. So she actually took the Artsy paper, and you've kind of got a visual triangle here where you have the image and then you have a word focal point and then you have an element focal point, and that leads your eye around the design. And then Jerry is our nature photographer, so she has a whole bunch of animal images, so it goes well with that too. I love how the browns are supported by, looks like sugarcane, but I'm sure it's just sort of reeds or something. And she has not added any shells, so these elements work perfectly, and the red button sort of coordinates with the beak of the bird. Another kind of non-photo layout here from Megan. So if you guys didn't catch my live session a couple of weeks ago with design cuts, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe, I don't know, the weeks just keep rolling into one another. You can go ahead and you can catch that session, but she's actually used an element as the focal point of her design and supported it with the WordArt. This would make a great card design. You could print it out and send it as a greeting card. And then Alame, she has taken the Aubade collection and she's used the tools in Photoshop to recolor her layout design. I love how dark this purple is. It really allows her elements and her images to sort of shine and stand out from that dark background. Joan used the frame that comes with the bonus with 3 different photos. So I showed you how to clip one photo to 3 different frames. This is Joan adding 3 different photos to those frames, and I love how she has created a variety of colors and sort of textures. So you've got this black and white here, you've got a much darker image at the top here, so this brings in the blacks, but then you've got the bright oranges, which is supported by the fish, and the paintwork down at the bottom here. This looks like one of the coastal stamps. So she's actually used just part of the, sorry, not the coastal, it was the seascapes. She's used just the lower portion of the seascapes. Let me go ahead and just show you that if I can find it easily. I have over here the seascapes. So she's used just this bottom portion of that brush to embellish her design. And I forgot we're not going into Photoshop. We have the layouts all right here. So you can see she's added that in orange, and that sort of draws the orange all the way through the design. We also have this little bit of orange here, and then we've got the blue in the center, which coordinates with the artistry around the edges. So super fun. I love that one. This is another great, you know, a layout where it has nothing to do with the beach. So, you know, these neutral blues and tan colors are really great for all sorts of photos. I really like her title here. It's really quite a fun title, and because she's placed that large title so close to her subject, it sort of becomes one. I also like how she's used that element in the background. Notice how she's desaturated it and she's blended it into her background to become part of the imagery. Another one by Michelle, her sweet granddaughter. She's placed the nets either side to sort of draw your eye to the face, and then grounded by this wonderful title cluster. And then another one here. I'm not sure if this is this. I'm not sure if this is the this one is not one that. This is not using the Aubade collection, so I'm just going to skip over that one. This one is, and again, Alame has used partial, just one part of that same seascape brush to add in some texture to her design. She's also used Photoshop to recolor, and this is where she has used that stroke effect to add a little bit more body to one of those sun elements. And again, I think she may have recolored this slightly too to best support her photo. So instead of having more kind of yellows and blues, we've got more pinks and blues. And then finally, these 2 pages are from Adrienne, and she was experimenting with the SkyTransfers to superimpose a sort of an artistic sky to these to the same photo. So you can see she's made kind of a daylight one, and then she's done a nighttime one. So another way that you can incorporate the layers in the SkyTransfers to embellish your photo artistry. So that's pretty much all that I have for you today. Hopefully that has really helped. It's been better than a blog post. I'm hoping to be able to get a replay up and actually just create a blog post so that you can go back to it and look at it at any time. But it gives you a really great overview at the new products that are in the store at Anna Aspinus Design. So it's actually the Anna Aspinus Design store at Scraps. It gives you kind of a good idea of different ways that you can use those supplies, and hopefully if you've already picked up those supplies, then it's given you lots of inspiration for going ahead and using those in your layouts this week, regardless of whether you've been to the beach or not. It is kind of a beachy kind of styled collection, but by removing some of the shells and it being strategic, you could even go in and mix these words. So instead of having seize the day, you could add in just as seize, as in, you know, write the word seize, S-E-I-Z-E. So that would be another way. So you can mix and match these words by separating them to create your own titles. And I also have the font information too. So if you open this PDF file, it includes the fonts and the links of where you can actually find this these different words. So yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you guys can make it on Friday. I'm still hoping to be able to continue donating to the food banks, and we will be doing this is kind of a lot of basic sort of stuff, but I'll be doing it's a lot more involved on when I start deconstructing the layouts, because obviously my team are using a lot more kind of complicated techniques. The goal of these kind of sessions are really just to show you how the products go together and how you can quickly and easily make some layouts. You can see that I put together 3 layouts, I think. Was it 3 layouts that I ended up putting together? We had this one, and we had this one, so that's 2, and let's see what else we got. 3, or maybe we had 4. I think we maybe had 4 layouts. Yeah, so we ended up putting 4 layouts together in an hour and a half. So probably an hour, because it took me some time to kind of go through some of those other layouts. But yeah, I think that this is a great medium for doing this. I can show you a lot more, a lot faster, and you know, get you super inspired, which I think is fun. So I think it's Judy says, now on to creating. And if you have picked up my collection, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. It really helps me to kind of continue doing all of this free stuff when you guys go and, you know, support me in the store as well. Kay says, thank you for your time. Going to go ahead and get the extra brushes collection. Awesome. Was waiting for your run through today. Thanks. There was another question too. Kay said, how about adding layout number 19 by Mike to Friday's menu as a deconstruct, the one with the palm tree? Oh, you mean Mikey? Yeah, I can ask Mikey, and Mikey's on here, or at least, yeah, she's still here. I think you were talking about this one. This one. Hey Mikey, would you mind sending me that one? If I'll email you if you've kind of already kind of nipped out from here. Ruby Lynn says, so much fun. I'm so glad. I'm sorry for the few short yawns. It has been a busy weekend. We had a graduation party for Ella, and I have done a lot of socializing this weekend and not a whole lot of sleeping, so that could be catching up on me now. And then Pat says, wonderful, love watching the magic happen. So not so much for me though. I don't know, Pat. I think you underestimate yourself. I think that, you know, I think you have to kind of not overthink it. And I also think you have to have that positive mindset. If you read my newsletter this past weekend, I talked about that. When we tell ourselves that we can't do something, then we really can't do it. But if we kind of open our minds a little bit and just kind of experiment and play a little bit and see what happens, with a little bit of practice, I think that we can surprise ourselves. So, you know, don't tell yourself, don't start with those limiting beliefs that the magic can't happen, because I think that it can happen. I think you just have to kind of just open up the supplies. None of what I did today was organized. All I did was basically select some layouts that my team have created, put them in a folder, and I put all the supplies together, and all of the 4 layouts that I did for you today were completely done ad lib. Now, granted, I did design the collections, so I do have an idea of how some of these pieces go together. But if I can do it, you can do it too. It's just drag and drop. And I think we get so caught up in it being perfect and as not being able to create something that we really we shut ourselves down before we even give ourselves a chance. So please just, try to keep an open mind. And I'm going to be doing these with all of the collections. If you guys like them and you enjoy them, I will try and do this on a monthly basis when I kind of release the collection. It's one of the nice things about just doing one collection a month now, is that I have a lot more time to be able to do this sort of stuff. And you guys can then go ahead and practice for a month before I then bring out another collection. It also gives me more time to do classes and actually have a life as well. So that's kind of fun as well. Joanne says, lots of inspiration, eager to try this palette with some great mountain snow photos from Colorado. I think that would be awesome, but especially, the browns and the rocky kind of thing. I think it would be great for downtown photos too, because you have the kind of neutral tones from the buildings and then also the sky. So I think that's really great. Kathy is here, and she has both of them. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I'll try and get the replay up today. If not, it'll be tomorrow. But tomorrow we actually have Ella's graduation, so I'm not sure how long that's going to take tomorrow, if it's going to take the whole day or what we're going to be doing. So as soon as I can, I will get the replay up for you guys. Kay says, kind of like the I think I can. Yes, exactly. That's what we have to tell ourselves. There's a lot of subconscious when we say, it's kind of like when you say, I'm not very good at names. And then it's like you can teach yourself to remember names. But if you tell yourself you can't remember names, then you'll never be able to do it. So I was listening to a guy this week, and he actually coaches this stuff. It was something one of these summits that I like to listen to when I was working, and he's absolutely right. It's like when you tell yourself, you're telling your subconscious, and you're dumbing yourself down to what your capabilities are. I tell myself often that I'm terrible with computers, but when Eric's not around and push comes to shove and I really have to troubleshoot by myself, I can make it happen. So yeah, I think it's just an important component of being an artist, is just be open to the idea that yes, you can. I think we're told as children, we get this creativity kind of beaten out of us as children, not physically beaten out, but we have to become responsible adults. And so there is no time or space to play and be creative. And I just think that it's rubbish. I think that we can go back, and especially as we get older, I think that it's really important to keep that part of our brain functioning. It keeps us alive, it keeps us entertained, and it gives us, an immense amount of enjoyment. Gigi Scrap Cat said, as a newbie to your design elements, I'm learning so much about playing. I love that. That's the whole point of this. If you're not having fun, then why do it, right? Pat says, doing a large travel book and having lots of trouble picking kits. Can't just use a few as too many pages. This hunting makes creating very slow. Pat, so think about, this is what my advice to you would be. Look at the colors of your photos, and then go to the store and look in the ArtPlay palettes and find the colors of the palettes that coordinate with your images. So if you have lots of blues and greens, then look for that. Neutral palettes go across the board. So neutral is always a good idea. Browns, creams, tans, anything with those colors in are always good for any type of photo, because you can make them work. And then just kind of do it that way. Don't worry too much about the elements, because you can remove elements. And most of the time these days, I don't include I purposely didn't include shells in these artsy background papers or sand, because I wanted them to be used for other travel photos, other outdoor adventures, family photos, whatever it is you want to scrapbook this week. I wanted the palette to be as customizable as possible, so that you can use it for a variety of topics. I want you to be able to come back to this palette multiple times and be able to use it for lots of different subjects. And then Kathy says she loves this way of presenting the collection. So glad. That's awesome. Excellent. And thank you for the congratulations to Ella. Yeah, we're really excited for her. She seems to, I'm finally seeing her sort of decompress now, which is really nice. She's really stressed out there for a while. But now, you know, graduation, she's hanging out with her friends and she's kind of thinking ahead to college. I'm sure we'll be having more freak out sessions as we get into August. But for now, she's just enjoying that downtime. Okay. So, glad that you guys are doing a large travel book over the decades. It looks like a couple of you are doing that, so that's awesome. And overwhelming. So if you guys haven't done the project, the what is it called? I have to remember. It's called the AA project. So if you go to Anna Aspinus Designs and you go to the store, if you're new to my Artistry, every December I do a project class. And it must be in all classes. Let's go ahead and find it. So here we go. We've got Project 2020, which is right here. So if you're interested in, if you want a good format for putting together an album and you've not done this class, I highly recommend it. I actually like to do a photo book at the end of each year, but it really is geared towards any type of project. It talks about helping you choose choose a title for your project, well, not a title, but choose a theme for your project, in which case it would be a travel theme, but it helps you break down the project into manageable steps if you've got a really large project book. So it's something that I will do again this December, but in the meantime, if you are curious about my album magic formula, as it used to be called. So I've been using this formula for over 10 years now. Not much has changed, but I invite people every year to join me on this project, and it's an opportunity to get a photo book. But if you don't want to wait until December, I highly recommend this. Okay, and Kathy says, busy time of year. I had 2 granddaughters graduate from high school this past weekend. Yeah, it's crazy. I've been to so many graduation parties this weekend. It's been nuts. I think Ella actually came home at 4:30 this morning as I was waking up from all the parties that she went to. So she's a little older. She's nearly 19. So you know, and she's fairly responsible. So we're not worried about her. But it was kind of funny that she was coming home late from being out at parties and with her friends, just kind of hanging out and chatting with them. So it's really fun to see them with no stress after the year that we've had. So Ruby Lynn says the 2020 project was a wonderful class. It really helped. Awesome. Excellent. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then I'm going to go ahead and head out of here. Thank you again for being here, everybody. I know that there's a lot more of you who are not chatting with me, so please jump into the chat with me next time. I really love getting to know you and getting feedback, and if there's anything that you want to see, then I am more than happy to to make that happen for you. If you don't tell me, I don't know. It's kind of the way I kind of move forward with that. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will hopefully see you guys on Friday. Hopefully you guys sign up and come to my Connect session. That one's done by a Zoom. It's a little bit more cozy, and you also have the ability to chat with me. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I'm glad to get back to doing that because it's been a while since we had one of those. Okay, take care, everybody. We'll chat with you soon. Bye-bye.